And joining me now is David Makovsky, Senior Fellow at the Washington Institute of Near East Policy. David, thank you for joining us.
Delighted to be with you.
So I just reported that Adi Alexander, the father of an American-Israeli hostage, Idan, called on both Biden and Trump to work together to advance a hostage deal. How likely is it that the outgoing and incoming administrations will successfully collaborate on this issue? What are you hearing behind the scenes?
Look, I think the national security teams are working actually nicely together. It's one of the underreported stories. And I think that's important. I think they actually work together on something that dealing with the West Bank. There was a whole issue on the banking crisis, on the Palestinian issue, and the teams are working well. So, and I think for the Biden people, this is critical to wrap up whatever is possible before they leave office. The president sees this as a moral obligation, and the incoming president has said, and we saw these quotes of Lindsey Graham, someone who's close to the president-elect Trump, that want this issue resolved before he takes office. So I think, there's no guarantees here, and the devil's always sadly, tragically in the details. But I do think on this case where there's clear common ground, it's not a partisan issue in any way. I do think it won't fall because the two sides are not working together. Let's put it that way.
Could the transition between administrations impact the progress of negotiations? Can the two ideally advance a deal before the switchover?
Look, you've got all these things lining up. You've got a Lebanon ceasefire, which decouples the two arenas. So Hamas is more alone than it was in the past. You've got Iran now totally distracted with other things. And Hamas has to know that also. I mean, they're not a Hamas, an Iranian proxy like Hezbollah is, but Iran has been dealt some serious blows. And now the presidential election has been decided, so you kind of know going in. Everyone is hoping for the case of like the American hostages, which were released 20 minutes into the new administration of Ronald Reagan. I'm not saying that history here is going to repeat itself, because Hamas is different than a state. Of course, this is a terror organization. But there are some big things that have come together. But look, there's no guarantees. But I do think for this administration, they care deeply about this. Brett McGurk has been out in Saudi Arabia working this issue and other places. He's the point person of the administration. This is on their priority list. That I know for sure.
So moving on to the situation in the north, given the U.S.'s role in facilitating the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, and considering how previous ceasefires between Israel and Hezbollah have been very fragile, to say the least, what lessons do you think that Washington has learned to ensure that this truce is more durable?
Look, this one is a harder one, I think, because it's clear. I think the administration wants to focus on, big violations like rocket launchers, tunnels, manufacturing of weapons plants, and things like that. And they're not going to be looking for pistols or anything. But you're in this very murky 60-day period where the IDF could do more of what it wants until this happens, until the transition is complete. By the time that's finished, then the new administration comes in, and then it takes them time to get their personnel into place. So I think the assumption here is that with all the destruction on the South Lebanese villages, and I also talked to Israelis over the weekend who are very involved in this issue, that with all the destruction of the villages, Israel's big problem is not going to be the first 60 days. But I do think it's important that, if there's a mechanism, this enforcement mechanism, whether it involves one of the heads of CENTCOM, the U.S. Central Military Command, is a real mechanism. And I just don't know how long it's going to take. But I do think most people think that things will be quiet for a while, but having quiet is not enough, because Israel learned the lesson last time that if you just don't want to rock, when you have quiet, you don't want to rock the boat, you could become addicted to calm. So Israel's going to be very vigilant, looking for violations wherever it can, I think. And how the mechanism is going to work in these first 2 months, I don't know. People are just assuming that Hezbollah is going to might take years until they regroup. But what Israel learned from the last time is don't wait. Just because there's calm, that doesn't mean there's not activity. They could be acquiring weapons even if they're not using them. So the quiet could be a little bit misleading in that regard.
David Makovsky, thank you very much.
Delighted to be with you.